Hello and welcome to Indus News Live from Islamabad. I'm Hira Mustafa and these are the headlines. The International Atomic Energy Agency has indicated that Iran yet again violated the 2015 nuclear deal. Diplomats say while the amount of enriched uranium extracted by Tehran is small, it amounts to a fresh breach. The report comes as Iranian representatives met other signatories in Vienna in a bid to rescue the accord. "19 people have been sentenced to death in Myanmar for killing an associate of an army captain. These are the two such sentences announced in public since a February 1st coup and crackdown on protesters. An activist group says 618 people have been killed by security forces so far. India has reported the highest daily COVID-19 cases since the pandemic began, with 144,000 infections overnight. Here in Pakistan, the virus has claimed 100 lives and infected more than 5,000 people in the last 24 hours. The nationwide death toll has crossed 15,300. Globally, there are 2.9 million fatalities and more than 134 million cases. Turkey says the U.S. will send 2 warships to the Black Sea next week and they will remain there till May 4th. Commenting on the development, the Pentagon said the military routinely sends warships to the region. This comes amid heightened border tensions between Ukraine and Russia. Well, these were the headlines. News in detail coming after the short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now the news in detail. The International Atomic Energy Agency has indicated that Iran yet again violated the 2015 nuclear deal. The report comes as Iranian representatives met other signatories in Vienna in a bid to rescue the accord. Diplomats say while the amount of enriched uranium extracted by Tehran is small, it amounts to a fresh breach. The talks broke Friday with no clear signs of progress, but most representatives involved sounding optimistic about the prospects. France says a positive first week of talks should not be undermined by new Iranian provocations. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Agnes van der Merle told reporters it is all the more important that Tehran refrain from any further violations. Meanwhile, U.S. and Iranian officials have clashed over what sanctions Washington should lift to resume compliance. A State Department official warned of an impasse if Iran remains adamant that every sanction imposed since 2017 must be lifted. The official said U.S. has seen some signs of Iranian seriousness during the indirect talks, but it wasn't enough. In Myanmar, at least 19 people have been sentenced to death for killing an army captain's associate in Yangon. The military-owned media says 17 of them were sentenced in absentia. The junta has also turned down a request by UN Special Envoy Christine Burgener to visit the country. Meanwhile, Myanmar's ousted lawmakers have urged the UN Security Council to take action against the military. They said their countrymen are ready to pay any cost to get back their freedom. So far, over 600 people have been killed by security forces for protesting against the February 1st coup. Turkey says the U.S. will send 2 warships to the Black Sea next week and they will remain there till May 4th. This comes amid heightened border tensions between Ukraine and Russia. Commenting on the development, the Pentagon said the military routinely sends warships to the region. Spokesperson John Kirby said it was not anything new. In response, Russia said it is concerned over increased Black Sea naval activity by what it called powers who do not have a coastline in the region. The Deputy Foreign Minister said visits by NATO countries and the length of stay of their warships have increased. India has reported the highest daily COVID-19 cases since the pandemic began, with 144,000 infections overnight. Globally, there are 2.9 million fatalities and more than 134 million cases. Details in this report. As the third wave of COVID-19 grips a number of countries, authorities warned that it is way more serious than the previous ones given new variants. Peru's President Francisco Sagasti has offered an apology to everyone who lost loved ones, saying the state had failed during the pandemic. Healthcare personnel in Mexico are protesting for being left out of the vaccine rollout. In Brazil, President Jair Bolsonaro has attacked the pending Congress probe into the federal government's pandemic response. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization has warned that Brazil is facing a raging inferno of an outbreak as cases and deaths soar.
Even by the time you get vaccines into a country, by the time you get them into people and you're getting them to a relatively small proportion of the population, that will have a small effect in limiting the risk to some people. But what you're dealing with here is a raging inferno of an outbreak, and that requires population-level action in the rapid identification, isolation, quarantining, because you have to approach this at that scale to slow this thing down.
And as vaccination drives escalate, so do the problems linked to it. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control says it is aware of several incidents involving adverse reactions to the Johnson & Johnson vaccine in 4 states. Europe's drug regulator also said it is reviewing rare blood clots in 4 people in the U.S. who received the jab. Meanwhile, there remains a shocking imbalance in the global distribution of vaccines. WHO says 1 in 4 people are vaccinated in high-income countries, while only 1 in 500 is inoculated in low-income countries.
There remains a shocking imbalance in the global distribution of vaccines. More than 700 million vaccine doses have been administered globally, but over 87% have gone to high-income or upper-middle-income countries, while low-income countries have received just 0.2%.
In another distressing news for AstraZeneca, Australia has ordered more alternative vaccines, setting back its vaccination rollout. In Thailand, hospitality workers are fearing for their livelihoods as the country announced more curbs in 40 provinces for 2 weeks. Coronavirus has claimed another 100 lives in Pakistan, while over 5,000 people tested positive in the last 24 hours. The Health Ministry says the death toll has risen to 15,329. The ministry said the positivity ratio has jumped to 10.47%. It said the number of active cases has crossed 73,000. Nearly 716,000 people have contracted the virus so far, out of which more than 627,000 have recovered. Meanwhile, Pakistan's envoy to UN has called on the international community to avoid vaccine nationalism. In a press briefing in New York, Munir Akram warned that vaccine inequality will translate into economic disparity. The Saudi-led coalition says it has destroyed another explosive-laden drone launched by the Houthi rebels in Yemen. Saudi state media says the drone was aimed at civilian areas in Khamis Mushed. The coalition forces said they also destroyed a ballistic missile heading towards the Jazan airport. Earlier, the rebels claimed their explosive-laden drone hit the target at a sensitive site at Abha airport. Tensions between the two sides have flared up, prompting the international community to urge a ceasefire. Meanwhile, the Yemeni government has exchanged 17 prisoners with the UAE-backed Southern Transition Council. In the West Bank, a Palestinian teenager has lost his right eye after Israeli forces shot at him in the southern city of Hebron. Palestinian media says occupation troops shot a rubber-coated round. They also fired tear gas and rubber bullets at people protesting against settlements in East Jerusalem. An Israeli lawmaker was injured as police beat him during the demonstration. Ophir Kassif's spokesperson said the demonstration was peaceful and calm until security forces arrived. Meanwhile, Palestine's Hamas group has slammed Israel for rejecting the World Court's investigation into war crimes. In Algeria, thousands took to the streets in the capital Algiers to mark the 112th Friday demonstration of Iraq. The protest movement has been campaigning for political changes in the country. Demonstrators call for the political establishment to depart and the army to quit politics. They vow to keep protesting until Algeria becomes a state of rights and a civil state. President Abdelmadjid Tebboune has set June 12 as a date for early legislative elections. But protesters have rejected the poll, saying nothing has changed as the president belongs to the old regime. In Ireland, a car was set on fire and riot police lined the streets in Belfast despite appeals to postpone protests after Prince Philip's death. Pro-British loyalist militants say there had been a spectacular collective failure to understand their anger over Brexit. Despite appeals for calm from London, Dublin and Washington, the nightly unrest spread further into Belfast. Some masked individuals threw bricks and missiles at the police. The clashes have been some of the worst violence in years and raised concerns about the 1998 peace accord. In the U.S., a doctor who performed George Floyd's autopsy last year says he stands by the homicide conclusion. At the murder trial, Dr. Andrew Baker testified he stood by the cause of death he determined last year. In his report, the chief medical officer ruled that Floyd's death was caused by cardiopulmonary arrest. Talking to the jurors, Baker said neither Floyd's use of fentanyl nor his heart disease caused the subdual. He added the neck compression during the arrest remained the primary cause of Floyd's death. The 19-year police veteran Derek Chauvin has pleaded not guilty to murder and manslaughter charges. U.S. rapper and actor Earl Simmons has died after a heart attack. Media reports says the 50-year-old, who is known by the stage name DMX, suffered a drug overdose. His family says he collapsed at home and was taken to a hospital in New York, where he was placed on life support. Darkman X took his moniker from the name of a drum machine used in rap songs. The rapper released 8 albums and was nominated for 3 Grammys. He earned more than 40 film and television credits, including Romeo Must Die, Cradle to the Grave, and Exit Wounds. The La Soufrière volcano on the eastern Caribbean island of St. Vincent has erupted after decades of inactivity. The eruption sent dark plumes of ash and smoke billowing into the sky, triggering evacuations from surrounding villages. Prime Minister Grenadines Ralph Gonsalves says around 4,500 residents near the volcano have been evacuated. At a news conference, Gonsalves said it could be months before they could return home. Meanwhile, the Seismic Research Center says the eruption column is estimated to reach 10 kilometers. In a tweet, the center said the falling ash could affect the Grenadines, Barbados, St. Lucia and Grenada. More news stories coming up after the short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. There is hard to find much to rejoice during a pandemic. But an Egyptian artist is spreading joy in Cairo streets by doing a cappella and imitating saxophone sounds. This report has more. A rare form of art in Egypt, a cappella is a genre of music performed without instruments. It relies on sounds and tunes produced through various vocal techniques of the artist. From the age of 16, Alexandrian musician Ziad Ibrahim began watching videos on social media, mastering his skills.
At first, I was playing music in tunnels, in the streets, on the tram and everywhere that I can simply reach people. I started making music in a very different way, strange to people's ears. It was something odd and controversial. This is very nice. This is very bad. So I tried to be special amongst everyone.
The young singer goes by the nickname Dr. Almaziga. He performs a cappella in public space around Cairo and Alexandria, where people regularly gather and watch.
Its exercises are like singing. Its exercises are vocalized and solfege, just like singing. The main source of the sound is from the stomach, and it is controlled by the throat. I put slight pressure on my throat and release the tune as if I'm singing, but while compressing the tune. So you can only hear the tone.
Mostly inspired by American singer Michael Winslow, Ibrahim is chasing uniqueness and individuality. Though Egypt is unfamiliar with Western forms of art, Ibrahim says he wants his country to embrace a cappella. In Iraq, Mosul's largest Al Rabia theater still lies in ruins, even after 4 years of liberation from ISIS. But over the past few weeks, local volunteers have worked to remove dust and debris from the theater. More in this report. Mosul's cultural and artistic life had always been part of the city's identity. Therefore, volunteers are playing their due role in reviving art in the vibrant city. Sponsored by local radio, the Watar Orchestra is the first of its kind to exist in years in Mosul. It is composed of youth from the Nineveh province's different religious groups.
Without a doubt, Mosul nowadays needs, for instance, this stage, this theater. That is important for the city of Mosul, so that the artistic life, history, and artistic as well as creative identity of Nineveh returns at the present time, after the end of the most dangerous battle of our modern times.
It held its first concert titled The Art and Soul of Mosul in front of a packed audience. The orchestra performed a series of traditional and folkloric musical pieces, some of them from Mosul itself.
We, the administration of the Water Orchestra and of Radio Al-Ghad, decided to have our premiere in the ruins of Al Rabia Theatre to give a message to the world that this city is a city of culture. The city of this theatre represents and is part of the soul of the people from Mosul.
Many who attended Watar Orchestra's performance witnessed an event at a public theatre for the first time in their life. The orchestra now hopes to grow and perform in different parts of the country. Chinese regulators have fined the Alibaba Group $2.75 billion for violating anti-monopoly rules. The penalty comes after a 4-month probe and marks the highest ever antitrust fine to be imposed in China. In a notice, the state regulator said the fine constitutes around 4% of Alibaba's 2019 revenues. The SAMR said it has ordered the company to stop illegal activities under China's anti-monopoly law. Meanwhile, Alibaba says it accepts the fine with full sincerity and will ensure its compliance. In a statement, the tech giant pledged to strengthen its operations per law. Now it's time to have a look at the weather update across the globe. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.